This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Illustrations. If you love quirky, colorful art transformed into fun, handmade stationery items, pretty much guaranteed to brighten somebody's day, that's just what you'll find in my new online shop at finelimeillustrations.com. That's fine as in I'm fine, lime as in the fruit, illustrations.com. Browse the entire collection or sign up for my email list to see some behind the scenes peeks into my studio. You'll also get first notice of new product launches and subscriber only sales. And as an added little bonus, you'll also receive a free coloring sheet to help you relax and de-stress from your day. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I am your host, Melissa, and the lovely Heather Travis is here with me this week. Hello, Heather.
Hello, Melissa.
So for those of you who might be newer to the podcast, Heather is an artist who moonlights as a PR professional. She used to be a PR professional who moonlighted as an artist, and now it's the other way around.
I'm on the other side of the teeter-totter now.
So she stops by about once a month, and we talk about the business side of being a creative who makes their living from creating. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing today. So today's episode is about different inventory models within your business. So while this is kind of focused on people who make a thing and sell it, I do think that if you provide a service and sell it, there will still be things in here today that you'll be able to take away and apply to your business. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this episode came out of a thread that I was reading in a Facebook group that I'm in, where somebody asked the question about planned out of stocks. So this is where you might sell a purple bracelet and you may have 20 of them sitting on your shelf, but it says out of stock on your website on purpose. And so this person wanted to know, like, is this a good way to run a business? And the responses to this thread were really interesting because there was such a wide range of opinions on this. And they were all really well thought out responses. And it got me thinking about the different ways that we can control our inventory from a selling perspective. And so we've divided it into 3 different models. We've given them names. I don't know if these are the right names for them, but this is what we're calling them. We're going to go with a scarcity model, an urgency model, and an always available model. And we're going to talk about what each of them is and the pros and cons of all of them, because there are pros and there are cons to each of them, and which model might be best for you. And just as a little spoiler alert, we were talking about this before we hit the record button, and we both feel that there's aspects of each model that you can incorporate into your business. It doesn't have to be one and done. It can be 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 or 2 and 3 or all 3. And I also think that some of the things that come up in each model are a little bit values based. So whether you choose to go with some of these different things may depend very much on the values of you and your business. So that is something to think about as well. So this is also interesting because Heather is in the process of working out how to sell her paintings at her gallery. And so we've been talking a little bit about that beforehand. And so I know she's been noodling over all of these for the last little while, trying to figure out what she wants to do. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with this. But let's dive in with the scarcity model. Let's start with that one first.
Yep.
So this model is basically you have a thing, and when you sell the thing is gone. There's no more. There's no more of the thing. It's gone. And I think one of the really well-known kind of brands that does this, the first thing that came to mind for me was like the Birkin bag. Where the bag that celebrities all want, and they go on a wait list for it, and there's only so many made in a year, and when it's done. And so that's what I thought of. But then as I thought about it more, if you are a maker or an artist and you make one of a kind items, the scarcity model is your business model, because you make the thing and you sell the thing and it's gone because it was one of a kind. So yeah, and this is kind of when we were talking before we came on the air, Heather's selling original paintings. So when they're gone, they're gone.
When they're gone, they're gone. But it's interesting because I think, and you and I talked about it just before we hit record, when we were looking at the show notes, like every model, no matter what you're doing, there's an element of marketing and training your customers. You're constantly marketing to your customers around what that model or what that product launch looks like, or that product cycle. And even though I would say that my paintings are a scarcity model, if you asked my customers, I would say that there's a lot of people who are like, oh, if I want a painting from Heather, she just has paintings on her website. Like, I don't think that I've done a really good job at all of the training aspect. And so it's interesting. It's like your brand isn't what you say it is, it's what your customers say it is.
Yes, very much so.
And I would say your brand selling model is what your customers say it is, and so if you want it to be different than what they think it is, that's where the training and marketing come in. And that's the hurdle I'm jumping over.
Yes. And so this is a common thread that comes up with each of these models, is that there's a huge component of training your customers for what to expect when you're selling. And it's something that a lot of us don't think about, especially when you're starting out. You just want to sell the thing, right? Yeah. You're all about getting the thing out the door, getting customers, establishing some cash flow, all those things, right? So you're not necessarily thinking about like, oh, how do I train my customers, right? Because that's just not your goal at that point.
No.
But when you get into this and you start thinking about how you want to sell your products, training your customer, and it sounds so weird to say that, those words, training your customer, like they actually make me feel a little squidgy. I don't love it, but that's essentially what it is. You need to communicate to your customers and potential customers that this is how it works when they interact with you. So yeah, that's something that you have to start thinking about. And it's something that happens at every one of these different models. So one thing with a scarcity model is that when you're starting out, like Heather, you said your customers probably wouldn't say you have a scarcity model because you always have paintings available on your website. Like there's always a Heather Travis available to buy, right? So scarcity only works if people truly believe that they can't get the thing.
Yes.
Right. Like that there's an urgency to it. So some of the pros with a scarcity model are that it allows you to bring new things to market without having to worry about having old stock on hand. Like you can constantly be in creation mode, which is really great if you're a one-of-a-kind artist. So if you're a painter or a sculptor, or you make one-of-a-kind jewelry, any of those types of things, like you get to be in constant creation mode. You don't get bored. So if you're somebody who gets bored easily, another pro with this model is that people tend to want what they can't have.
Yes,
so if you do train them, if you train them correctly, then they're always going to know in the back of their head that when that thing is gone, they can't get it again, right?
Yes.
And it can really help with your branding because it really does reinforce the idea that your items are unique and one of a kind. And when we're an artisan, like a true artisan in the sense of the word, that you create one of a kind things, that's exactly what you want your customers to think.
Yeah.
You want them to think that when they go home, I have a one of a kind Heather Travis. I do. I have tulips in the rain hanging on my wall. It is a Heather Travis original, and nobody else can have it because it's hanging
Correct.
in my house.
Yeah.
Yay me.
And well, and what's interesting is, and this is why I've been trying to think with the scarcity model, is that while it's a scarcity model, it's also an always available all the time. And so you might not be able to get the painting that you wanted from me, but there's another painting that's come up on my website. And
Mhm.
that's why I've now actually, in terms of the scarcity model, I'm it's the training where it's going to be launches, and it's not going to be once I'm done a painting, that one painting goes up on the website. It's now going to be a collection or series of paintings done in a period and building up to it and letting people know there's currently nothing you can buy from me. And April 1st, there will be 5 things that you can buy from me. And when those 5 things are gone, you're going to have to wait until the next cycle comes around. And so that's where I'm trying to move to, because by constantly just putting stuff up on my website, I'm not doing a good enough job of telling people that it's actually there and that it's available for sale. People are like, "Wow, that's a beautiful painting." And then that's the end of it, as opposed to me being like, "Yeah, and it can be yours for the low, low price of," right? Like
Not too
that's
low.
the and that I think is the big thing in all of this discussion, when you're thinking through what you want that to look like, they're absolutely to match the product cycle or the availability cycle that you're working on. You need to have a marketing plan that you are capable and willing to execute that supports that.
Yes,
And that,
so absolutely. Marketing is a huge role in each of these models. Like there's
mhm,
just no getting around it. When you make a thing and you
yeah,
sell a thing or provide a thing, you have to market it.
yeah.
People have to know it exists and
And
that
the
it's
marketing
available.
is where the training comes in, right? Like
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
this will only be available here. Like it's the language, it's the fine print, it's the asterisks around the product launch
absolutely.
information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So actually that was on my list of pros for this model, is that it can be very good for things like seasonal launches and things. So if you want to
Yeah.
do like a Christmas launch or a Halloween launch, it doesn't have to be around a season. It can be like Heather mentioned, in that um, my next batch of paintings will be available at my
Yeah.
show. Like there's nothing new available until September
Yeah.
when my show launches,
Yeah.
because Heather's doing a gallery show in September. But the con that goes with that is that you're always in launch mode, which for some people can be utterly exhausting. Like for some personality types, being in that constant mode of launching and promoting, and it's a very intense period. It's a short period, but it's a very intense period.
Yes. And depending on how long you have, like you could be in constant promotion. I feel like I'm in constant promotion right now for September, but September's a long way off. And
Mhm.
that's a long time to not sell a painting. And so
And
I'm
constantly be
resisting.
talking about why people should buy from you,
Right?
right?
And so I'm constantly like, do I do a summer launch of paintings? But
Mhm.
then I'm worried that that will bastardize
Yeah.
the future. Somebody's itching, itching, itching for a Heather Travis. And by launching something in the summer, it's like they were waiting for it, but they can't hold on any longer. They're going to take it now.
Yeah,
And now I've just lost that future sale.
you're giving them their fix, and
Yeah,
then do they will they need another fix in September?
exactly.
Again,
So
it depends. That's where pricing comes in,
yeah,
right? Because your
yes.
paintings are big paintings, so they have a high price point. They're not $20 paintings,
No,
right? So is somebody going to have, maybe they spend $1,000 on a painting in July for summer?
they're
Are
not
they
gonna
going to
come.
have another $1,000 to spend in September? Some people will,
Yeah.
but a lot of people won't, right?
If you're out
So
there, please come find me.
I know we would like those of you who just go a
That's
thousand
why
dollars
just
for
putting
paint.
up that flag. If you're out there, come find.
Exactly. If you're one of those
Yeah.
people who's like $1,000 for a painting, my goodness, that's a bargain. Then Heather would love to chat with you.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Like it's funny because the availability model goes with your marketing model, and then it has to align with your budgets. Because if you can't afford to wait and only have 2 launches a year, then you need to have 4 launches a year, or maybe like it's I
Hmm.
think I think the finances will play a part in
Yeah,
what
you have
your
to
business
you
model
have to
looks
think
like.
about your cash flow,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
this is why using different models at the same
yeah,
time can be very beneficial, as we'll get into once we've gone through all the models. But
yeah.
Heather has other ways that she earns money, as do many other people. So it's
Mhm.
not like the urgency doesn't have to be there on your end
Yeah,
necessarily,
yep,
but there is still something about a Heather Travis original that is definitely a scarcity model, right? Like that, and so you want to play into that, but at the same time, there's other things that other
yes,
ways people can um
yes.
have things of yours. They're just not original. So
Exactly. And like a print, for instance, could be a
mhm,
limited edition. And that I think when you think through your business model, when we talk about, not putting all your eggs in one basket and diversifying your income stream, those are all aspects where you can say, aha, so I have this model, scarcity for this one thing, but then I'm going to have the always available for this other thing. That's
exactly.
another bucket of, and so that's
Exactly.
why I think Melissa and I net out that I don't think any of us could ever be one of these things exclusively. It would be
It's going to
interesting.
depend so much on your cash flow situation.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
you don't need to be an artist or do anything for that matter to have money
Right.
coming in, then yes,
Also come find Melissa and I.
you can paint one painting a year and that will be
Yeah.
your scarcity model. This is the
Mhm.
new Heather Travis for this year and it's $20,000. And when it's gone, you're out of luck till next year when I paint my next painting.
Yeah. Wow. Could you imagine only doing one thing a year though,
No,
creatively?
I can't. Honestly, I'd be bored out of my tree, but you
Right?
know. um, yes. So as we said, this a big part of this is about training your customer. You really do have to reinforce that um, mindset in your customer that when it's gone, it's gone. And so I was listening to a podcast. It was a very old podcast that I had listened to a couple of years ago, and I was listening to it again last week, um, where they were discussing exactly this. And
Mhm.
it was, I believe she was a jewelry maker. And
Oh,
so she talked about, she said once she decided to go with a scarcity model, it took her a full year to fully train her customers. And she did it via Instagram mostly. And she started off by just having one or two pairs and just going on Instagram and selling them and saying, this is it.
right.
When they're gone, they're gone. Um, and she would also talk about like, oh, like I'm only making 10 pairs of this kind. And when they're gone, they're gone. And she'd go on Instagram and then she'd say, I sold out in 2 minutes. And she maybe only had 3 pairs to sell at
Yep.
$10 a piece or whatever. So,
Yep.
it wasn't like she was selling thousands of dollars worth of earrings. She was selling maybe $50 worth of earrings and she sold out very
Yep.
quickly.
But
But she
still,
said, my customer didn't need to know how many pairs there were. They just needed to
yeah,
know that they sold out super fast.
exactly.
And she had to do this over and over again and create breaks in there. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's not like I sold out today, come back tomorrow. It's like I sold out
Right.
today. The next ones will be available in a month, right? And so slowly she increased the number of pairs that she had available for each of these
Yep.
launches to the point where she was still always selling out, but there was more styles and types available and it became a thing. And if people, and this is also how she nurtured her email list, which in turn helps her perpetuate the scarcity model.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
idea was that didn't if what you're looking for wasn't here today or you want to be on my next launch, make sure you sign up for my email list because then you'll be able to set a timer. And she talked
Right.
about how she used the Instagram timer feature,
Yep.
and how that made a huge difference when she used the timer, when she didn't use the timer. When she used the
Interesting.
timer, she would do much better because again, that
Right.
timer, that clock ticking
Yep.
down, it
Yep.
reinforces that whole. I will put a link to this episode in the show notes. It was the Strategy Hour
Was it
podcast.
yeah.
Hmm?
I'm like, I feel like I've listened to that episode. Was it Strategy Hour, the Boss Babe?
Yeah, it
And
was like
it was a
two or
Southern
three
girl.
years ago. I think we may have
Yeah.
even talked about it. Yeah, so I'll
maybe.
find the episode because it is an
Yeah,
older episode and I'll put it in the show notes so you can go listen to it. But this was very much based, it was jewelry designers that were on. So they were
yeah,
talking about jewelry specifically. But she did talk about how she trained her customer and how it was, a year-long process to get people to
yeah.
understand that, you know, when it's gone, it's gone.
Which is so contradictory. It takes you a year to get people to buy into an urgency model. And that I think is the biggest, like, particularly for creatives, you've already made the thing. And so now you're like, you just want it out there. But
Yeah,
the there's like you have to be slow and deliberate
you
in the
do.
methodology,
It
which is
requires
so fast. Like
patience,
it's so contrary to,
especially in the world where we live in, where everything is so instant. Social media can make it so instant. Like you can put the earrings up and they can sell instantly, but you
yeah,
have to resist that temptation and you have to
yeah,
be strategic about
yes,
it. It's like,
yes,
yes, I want them to sell them and I put them up there, but I don't need to put them up there today. I could put them up
right,
there a week from now and I can promote it and let people,
yeah,
so you really do need to think out your marketing for this.
yeah,
You need to, your email list is going to be huge for this kind of model because they're going to be the people that are waiting for the
yep,
thing. So you need to grow that list. You need to communicate with that list, all those things.
yeah. If you
And
have a
one of,
Patreon or any type of like subscription, like e-newsletter rewards, this is the model that would work really well for
Mhm.
rewarding people.
Yeah, definitely. If you could give your patrons early access
Early
to these
access.
things. And I've seen people do that. And sometimes the patrons will sell it out before it even gets to the public. So then it becomes an incentive for people to sign up for your Patreon or
Exactly.
or whatever you decide to use for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, you need to think about it, and you need to make sure that your branding is and your marketing is very focused on this. So it's a very focused message all the time to your
Yeah.
audience. So one of the other cons with this model, or not necessarily con, but a challenge, is that it can make it difficult for venturing into things like wholesale, which can be very
Yeah.
lucrative for a lot of makers
Yeah.
because your items are one of a kind or because they are very limited and a wholesaler can't necessarily restock them if they sell well. So you do need to think about that. It does limit the streams of
Mhm.
revenue that are open to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, something to think about. The other thing that I do want to mention, because this is something that a trap that I can fall into very easily, is that when you're reinforcing a scarcity mindset in your business, it can easily slip into other aspects of your business and your life. And I don't like the scarcity mind, like when it comes to life, I don't like the scarcity
Yeah.
mindset. And so you have to be
Yeah.
very careful. And I see a lot of makers and artists falling into this trap. It's when you start getting upset about people copying you or doing
Yep.
something similar to you, or where you no longer support other artists in your niche because you view them as competition. That's all
Yep.
scarcity mindset. And so when
Yes.
you go into this kind of mode, it can very easily start to creep into other aspects of your business. You have to be very vigilant about that.
Yeah.
So that's where it can get sticky with your values. So, like I said earlier, there are aspects of each of these that may not sit well with your particular values. So that's something you
Yep.
need to think about. So,
Yes. And even just what you're comfortable, like Brian and I have the conversation all the time. He's like, I am so uncomfortable asking people for their email address at the bike shop. He's like, mind you, he's like, I'll measure their inseam and stick a tape, like whoop to do, a bike fit. And so it's
I
all a
hear you
matter
on this.
of comfort and what makes you. And so if marketing that and even the language of it makes you uncomfortable, then that language, like you have to buy this now. If that makes you uncomfortable to say that, then that model probably isn't for you because that's like there's certain things I think even just to market the different models, you're gonna have to actually say very categorically and clearly to your customers,
Yeah.
particularly if you're using a model like Instagram, where you need to repeat it and often.
Yeah, any social media really. And that is a key part of a scarcity mindset, is that it doesn't work if all those paintings are sitting on a shelf in your garage for
No,
months.
no,
There's nothing scarce about them. They're still there. So you have to have a lot of confidence that you can sell those things quickly.
Yeah.
right? And make sure that you sell them quickly, because if people see you promoting that same painting for a year,
Yep.
then there's no urgency. It's like,
Nope.
it's been there for a year. I can wait till my next paycheck, or two or three
Exactly.
paychecks from now.
Yeah.
So you do have to aggressively market. Do you need to use language like buy it now because it'll be gone tomorrow? Not necessarily. There's different way, but
Yep.
you have to
Very clear
aggressively
about it.
market.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not something I'm good at. So I think I would struggle if my business was solely a scarcity model. But
Yeah. I
um,
would agree. I would agree with you too.
yeah,
And I think too, as a creative, like we're constantly creating things. So to have exclusive scarcity modeling, I don't know. I'm with you though. Like I feel like I constantly need to have the ability, like somebody could buy stickers or one
hmm,
little thing that gets them that fix that keeps
yeah,
them loyal, not loyal to you, but like, I don't know, you're on their radar. I don't know.
exactly. So with this model, with the scarcity model, you do have to be on their radar all the
All the
time, but you're
time.
not. But you don't always have something to sell them, right? Because that's
Yeah.
part of the whole
Yes.
scarcity. So it's I know that people who do this and do it well swear by it, and it can be
Yeah.
incredibly, because one of the, we didn't even mention this, but one of the things that you can get away with a scarcity model is you can have a much higher price point than if you sold that same
Yes.
thing all the time, because it becomes an exclusivity type of
Yeah.
thing. It's a thing that people can't have. So
Yeah.
it can be very profitable if you can do it well, but it
Yes.
does take a lot of work. Okay, so the next model on the list, and to be honest, this is one of my favorites. I actually really like this model, and I've seen so many
Mm.
people do it really well. This is the urgency model. So the idea with this is it's a step down from the scarcity model. Essentially, you make a thing, it's available now, it won't be available next week, but it will be available again sometime in the future. So it's
Yeah.
not a one and done. It's
Yep.
just here now, and it might be gone later, and it might come back. So it's I see this a lot. You see this a lot if you follow creatives on YouTube, where they open their shops for a limited time at set points throughout the year. So they might do a quarterly opening or a monthly
Yep.
opening, and they open for a week and then they close again. And this can be a really great model if you have other things that you do. It can also be a great model. Like I've seen a lot of new moms do this, or like when they come back from their mat leave and they're just trying to get back into the swing of creating and selling. And so they'll do scheduled store openings. I've also
Yep.
seen it with people who want to do extended vacations. It's a really great model because it lets you condense your shipping and packing into a very short time frame, which I think is
Yeah.
something none of us really enjoy doing.
Oh, no kidding.
So you can do you can cram it all in. And one of the things that I really like about it is it gives you extended periods to focus on creating new things and restocking without having to worry about filling orders, going to the post office, doing, all the busy work behind it.
Yeah.
And so I'm drawn to this model. I've seen so many people do really well with
I
it.
agree.
Um,
And I think exactly like you said, it's like it helps you compartmentalize the things.
yeah.
And particularly when you are creative, saying all of a sudden, oh, let's interrupt that creative process because you need to like march down to the post office for one little package versus saying, like, this week is packing week, and I'm packing all of my, and even funny enough, from a content generation perspective, like you can have all your content on the creation process, and then you have content around you packaging up all these hundreds of packages, and then you have content around, and so you can compartmentalize the content creation, but also the product development, the marketing, and the execution of it all. So you're not doing all things all the time. While we love sending out the thing, find me a creative who's like, packaging up packages is the greatest joy in my day. It's not. Like, I like sending it off to its new home, but I worry about if I'm putting enough bubble wrap around the painting. Like, to me, it's a very stressful. Did I do it right? Am I making enough money on the shipping? Like, there's so much. I get the
Totally.
address perfect. Like, there's so much stress around the shipping. it kind of takes away from the sale a little bit. So if you could mush it all together and like rip the band-aid off in 1 week, I would.
Yeah, I follow three Instagrammers who do this, or Instagrammers, YouTubers who do this, and I've mentioned a
Yeah.
couple of them on the show. Lee Ellickson is one. She does it through limited shop openings and her Patreon. Ellis Woolley, who we talked about, I think last week because I bought some Procreate brushes from her. She has a
Oh
Patreon.
yeah.
She's also a new mom, so she's gone to these. She's moved to doing limited shop updates where she
Right.
opens for limited periods of time, and then she takes break and restocks,
Yep.
and she does it all around her kids' nap time because that's
Yeah.
all the time she has right now
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
very, very little. So Ellis, I'll put a link to her YouTube. And another one who does this is Bailey J, and she's one of the OG art creators on YouTube. She is actually
Yeah.
Canadian, and she went from having YouTube as her sole revenue stream to opening her Shopify store and doing these sort of quarterly shop updates. I believe her shop is open all year round now, but for the first couple of years that she did this, she just did these quarterly shop updates, and she documented it incredibly well on YouTube. So if you want to go take a look at somebody who did this model, and is still doing it to a certain degree because she still does launch products, you can go back and take a look at some of her videos because she talks about it. And one of the things I will mention about this, because we just talked about shipping and how stressful that is. It is stressful, but people love watching packing and
No.
shipping videos.
And
They
that's where I'm
love
going with
them.
content creation. Like
Exactly.
packing up 50 is so much more exciting than the one thing, right?
So Bailey does these entire vlogs that are just packing and shipping, and people
Yeah.
watch to see if their order is being packed, and they'll
Yes.
leave comments like, hey, you packed my order at 12:14 in the video, kind
Yes.
of thing. And she also does live streams on Twitch of packing and stuff, and so she's actually talking to the audience while she's doing it, and
Yeah.
she's um so
That's smart.
people, but like ASMR videos of people
Yep.
packing are very popular. People find them very
Yeah.
soothing, very calming. So yeah, create content around that. And
Mine would
Bailey
be
would
that like
even do,
opposite of ASMR. I curse and I'm like fucking duct tape and I'm like it's so not if you want to see like unattractive studio Heather, it's Heather trying to wrap a painting to go cross country and protect it properly.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. I'm Bailey's are not ASMR, but there's a one uh vintage bookshop in Korea, I think, South Korea, that does ASMR videos of packing up their books. Has a French name actually. I'll leave a link to that one too. But they do like hour-long videos of just pack, and it's so soothing. It's packed in paper with string, and
Yeah.
it's so
That's
lovely and
lovely.
everything. So it totally fits their vintage book vibe. But anyway, yes.
I
So
think just to tie back quickly by what you said about Bailey J, I think one of the things to remember when we're talking about each of these models is that you whatever you decide now, it can always evolve and change. And so you can
100%.
start out with
Yeah.
one, you can evolve into another. You could then say, my business model has changed. I now need to. And I think the key is just making sure that your finances and your marketing align with it. But you can be all three today. Next year you
Hmm.
can be one. You
Totally.
can like
One of the
the
interesting
choice is yours.
things with Bailey and Ellis, Lee is more, she tends to do like, it's kind of like it's here and then it's gone kind of thing. But Bailey and Ellis both, just because the shop is closed doesn't mean you can't get that thing again. It just means that it's closed for now and she'll reopen again in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever.
Right.
So it doesn't, if you miss it, that's that urgency that you're not going to get the print that you wanted, or you're not going to get the pin that you wanted. And part of another reason they do this that we should mention from a business perspective is that both Ellis and Bailey have things that they don't make in their studio. So like Bailey does enamel pins, which she has made overseas. Ellis has things that she has printed. I believe she has some printed locally. Ellis is she's vegan and very environmentally conscious, so she tries to do local and all that kind of
Right.
thing at the same time.
Yeah.
So again, different value sets on both
Yep.
sides of the creator situation there, but she still has things printed at a local printer and stuff. And so when you're having those products made, you have to pay for them in advance before
Yeah.
you get any money coming in. And so they will order whatever quantity their budget will allow at the time for them to order and have come in. And so basically what the shop opening does is it pays for that order that they have already purchased and
Yeah.
gives them a little bit of seed money to make the next bulk
Yeah.
purchase and bring it in.
Yeah.
So it helps them with their cash flow in
Yeah.
that sense. And so that is something else to consider if you're having product made elsewhere,
Yep.
whether it's overseas or with a local printer or whatever. You need to factor that into how you're going to pay for it all. And sometimes you don't know when you first put that print out there, you don't know if it's going to sell 10 or if it's going to sell 1,000,
Yep.
right? So in some ways it's very conservative to start off with a small amount, and if it sells out, okay, next time I bring a bigger order in of
Yep.
them. And so it helps you manage your inventory a little bit better instead of ordering 1,000 and then being stuck with 800 of them
No
sitting
kidding.
there not selling. So from a cash flow and that kind of business perspective, it can be a really helpful tool.
Super helpful, particularly sometimes. I mean, I know I, with my print launches, have done pre-order. And so there was a bit of an urgency that if you did the pre-order, and so people actually gave me money up front before something even shipped, which was super helpful from a cash flow perspective. I'd already budgeted to outlay the cash for what I was having made, but
Yeah.
having those pre-orders, one, boosted my confidence in that.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
but two, I was like, wow, when I send this $500 out my door, 250 was already covered by customers. Like, yay, and
Yeah. And I
that's
I would put pre-orders in the urgency model. I think
yes.
they're part of that. And I do pre-orders as well. And yeah, it is just so nice to know that there's a market for the product, and B, that um it's people have paid for it before you necessarily have to put
Yeah.
the money out there. So, like you said, it can be a huge confidence builder
Oh
to
yeah.
do this kind of model, especially when you're starting out. I've also seen, and I think Ellis has done this. I'm pretty sure she's done this, where they'll do a Kickstarter to launch a
Yeah.
new product. Yeah, Ellis has done this with her washi tape. So, where if she wants to put washi tape out there, she does a Kickstarter. So people pay up front to support the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
The trick with that is your Kickstarter has to be fully funded. So you need to
Yeah.
think about how much you're asking for. Are you going to
Yeah.
get $4,000 to make washi tape, or are you going to get $100 to make washi tape,
Yeah.
right? So she's done that. And so then basically she's got the funds to place the order with the manufacturer. And then
Yeah.
when it comes in, she sends them all out. And so that's another urgency type of model that you can do. So I just like it because it helps create this nice balance and workflow. Like it's
For
very,
sure.
and you can have those uninterrupted creating periods, which
Yeah.
when you have an always available product model are really hard. It's hard to carve out those hours to just sit down and create the next thing.
And if it's
Um,
always available, and I have this where, there have been products that I have, I'll call it always available, but they've been available on my website, prints that I've had on my website for like over a year and a half now, maybe. And every time I'm like, oh, I should promote that. I
yeah,
forgot.
this happens all the time. It happens with my
Because
clients.
I'm on to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I tend to forget about it. And then I also worry, it's not like I have bazillions of followers. So I do worry about people are like, oh, her and this again. Like,
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
this again. Oh, crap. Well, she won't stop talking about that. Like, and so I worry about going from like always available to a fatigue mentality
Yeah.
with the audience. That's
Yes.
and,
So
and fatigue with me,
yeah.
right? Fatigue with me.
Yes. Yeah. So um before we move on to the always available model, there are, as much as I love this urgency model, there are some things you need to
Yeah,
be aware of with them.
planning, big one.
Planning is a big one. One thing I'm looking at my notes here that we missed with the pros is that this is a really good, also a really good way to figure out what your best sellers are. And
Yes.
so if you do decide to move to an always available model, maybe those items that constantly sell out when you have a shop opening become your always available best sellers.
Yeah.
So, if it's a mug that says thank you on it or something, I don't know. I mean, maybe, and it always sells out. Maybe you always have that available on your website and you fill those orders every week or something like that. So it's a good way. And there's those are the items that you take to markets with you. If you do in-person markets, you take the best sellers with you, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But like any model, there's some cons to it. Heather mentioned planning. You absolutely, if you are doing cyclical store openings, you got to be on top of it. And you have to communicate that to your audience. They have to know when the store opens.
Yeah.
They have to be waiting for it. You
Yep.
have to hit your deadlines. If you're ordering product that has to come in time for that store opening, you need to get your proofs to your
Yeah.
manufacturer and you need to make sure that the product arrives for it.
All
And
your
if you,
shipping supplies and like,
yeah. And
oh,
if you watch, if you watch Bailey, she's had some instances where her products have not arrived and she's in pure panic mode.
I'm sure.
So you get to see some of that because it's not all
No.
marshmallows and
Stuff gets delayed and there's customs delays or there's a
yes,
whatever, like you spill something in the studio the day before it happens and your laptop shorts out or like,
exactly. She's had the customs issue. She had another issue where all her sticker sheets arrived and they weren't cut properly. So she had thousands of sticker sheets and it was a dud. She had to
yeah,
get a new order for, so there's lots of things that can go wrong and you need to be a good planner for this
planner.
model to work. And you have to be a really good communicator. So
Yeah.
you're not promoting, it's not the same aggressive level that it is with a scarcity mindset
Mm.
but you still have to remind people when your store is going to be open. You have to constantly be hyping it up. You need to book that time in your calendar to make sure that you're there when the orders start coming in and you can start
Yep.
processing. And you need to be constantly communicating. It has to be really good communication. So not necessarily pushing in the way that you would with scarcity, but communicating.
Communicating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because again, it's training your customer.
Yeah.
The other thing with this is you have to be very vigilant with your budgeting and your cash flow, because particularly if you're having things made outside of your studio where you have to pay those bills in advance. So you need to be on top. If you are not a good budgeter and you're not good at managing your cash flow, this might
Yeah.
not be the best model for you.
Yeah.
But this is a great model if you want to do wholesale though, because this allows you to order in bulk and
For
sell in
sure.
bulk. And it also, you can do in-person markets and things like that because you have a constant source of stock. So yeah, there's
Yes.
some cool things with this model. I like this one.
Yeah, and urgency, just as we were talking about a market, like that could also be very easily, I'm going to have X available for my online customers, and then the rest, you have to meet me at the Delta Farmers Market this Saturday. Like
Exactly.
it doesn't have to be, and I think this in terms of availability, this isn't just selling online. This is
No,
availability.
this model
And
works
this is
excellent. There are a lot of makers out there who only do in-person markets, and
yeah,
that is what this model is, because
yep,
it's like, you want to buy it from me? I'm going to be at this farmer's market this weekend. I'm going to be at that market next weekend. I'm going to be doing this indoor market at the end, and that's all my markets for the
yep,
summer.
yes,
There won't be any more till Christmas. So that is also, an urgency model. Yes, your items will be available at the next market, but the next market might not be for another 2 or 3 months. So
yep.
it works really well with markets, I think.
Totally. And does everybody go to like, I don't go to every Christmas market in my community. I go to
No.
a couple, right? And so
But
I'm not
there are definitely markets where I have gone because I specifically want to get something from a certain vendor who,
100%.
yeah.
100%. Yes.
There's
Yes.
actually a duo that makes pottery here in the Kootenays up near Nelson, and they do the Make It show in Edmonton every year, but they very rarely do the Make It show in Vancouver. And so because what they make is very breakable,
Yeah.
Shipping costs are horrendous for their products. So I wait for them to come to Vancouver. And as soon as I see them advertise a Vancouver show date, which is very rare, I am there specifically for them. I don't care where the market is, but
Right.
yeah, so definitely selling at markets is an urgency model for sure.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay, the last one on the list is the always available market. And so this is basically like your retail store. When you walk down to your local Pharmasave or your local Shoppers or whatever to get toothpaste, you expect them to have Crest Pro Health toothpaste in stock
Yeah.
because they are a drugstore and that is what they're supposed to sell, right?
Like
So
going to the
that
grocery store and getting milk and eggs. You're going to get
exactly.
milk and eggs.
If they don't have milk, you're going to be very upset because they're a grocery store. Like, what are you doing? So
Yeah.
that's basically what the always available model is. It's that always available, always shipping, and you might have the occasional out of stock, but if for some reason you run out or you run out of materials or whatever, but the expectation is that
Yeah.
you're going to be available for business, open for business every day
Yeah.
of the week. So this is probably the closest to my current model right now. And I spent 20 years in retail. So and Heather, you co-own a retail shop as well. So, you know, this is the model that we're probably
Yep.
most familiar with.
Yes.
It's
Although I would
also
say working in the bike industry right now, we're in the scarcity model, but
that's
that's
true. That's true. I
not a
worked in
product of
the
our own choice.
I worked in the retail drug market. So, yeah, toothpaste always.
Well, so I have a note in my planner, which is covered in Melissa's beautiful stickers. And I have a note, I need to put my stickers in for April and May, but then I'm like, check stock stickers to order more from you. And my assumption is that my rainbow planner stickers, when I need them, they're there.
They're
And that
there.
has always been the case. And you have always shipped them beautifully and they always arrive and my planner looks beautiful. But my assumption is that that product, when I need it for my planner, it's there unless I hear from you otherwise that says I'm discontinuing
Yes,
my
like if
rainbow
I was
stickers, in which case I'll
discontinuing
hoard them and then cry.
if I was discontinuing them, and so if you have an always available model, it doesn't mean you need to carry everything that you ever made forever. You can discontinue items, but when you
Yeah.
discontinue items, you need to let people know. So it's like the rainbow stickers are discontinued. I have 20 packages of them left. When they're
Yeah.
gone, they're gone.
They're
Okay. So
gone.
then you transition to a scarcity model with that particular item. So this is where
Yeah.
all the models can work together,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but with the always available model, so one of the pros of this is that it's probably the most consistent revenue wise and cash flow wise in theory. I say in theory.
I was going to say, yeah, in theory, sometimes that works.
But
Sometimes it
sometimes it doesn't, for sure. Economic factors, all that kind of stuff. I know
doesn't.
a lot of people who use this model and who are struggling right now because it's not a great economy for
Correct. We're hitting
wants.
refresh and wondering why nothing's happening.
Exactly. So in theory, this is the best for consistent revenue and for consistent cash flow. That's the idea. This also allows for you to make sure you always have your best-selling items in stock. So if you are well known for your rainbow stickers, then like Heather said, they should always be in stock and available. It also means that you're always there for your customer, no matter. So one of the things with the urgency and the scarcity model is if you have a customer who suddenly has a birthday they need to buy a present from, and your shop is closed because you use the urgency model, they can't buy from you. They have to go as much as they may want to, right? They might be
Yeah.
like, oh, I wish I could get her that print from so-and-so
Yeah.
shop, but she's closed for a month.
Yeah.
So you got to go to Etsy or you got to go to another place and you
Mhm.
got to buy a different birthday present,
Yeah.
right? So, but if you're always available when they need that birthday present or that Christmas gift or whatever, they can go and they can purchase from you.
Yeah.
So it promotes loyalty, it promotes long-term customers, all those things. It also makes other streams of revenue much easier to explore and manage, particularly wholesale. But because you always have inventory and you're always available, you can sell through other, you can sell in your own shop, you can sell on Etsy, you can sell at markets, you can sell wholesale, you can do pop-ups. Like I'm doing a pop-up in 2 weeks. It just came on my radar a week ago. Like this is a very last minute pop-up that this person
Yep.
is putting on. And because I'm do the always available model, I have stock. I need to make a few things, but I have stock that I can take and I don't need to freak out. And
Yeah.
I can be pretty flexible in that.
Yeah.
So
Which is a huge opportunity because it's an opportunity to make money, but you didn't have to do a huge cash outlay just for this
no,
one thing,
right,
right?
exactly. Whereas for Christmas market season, where maybe I'm doing multiple markets, I
Yeah.
really have to put in a concentrated month of effort to make sure I have
Yes.
stock levels for all those markets, right?
Yes.
Um, so yeah. Uh, one thing we haven't talked about
Mm,
um, with the other models, because it doesn't work too well for the other models,
yeah.
is the ability to scale your business.
Yeah.
So if you do the always available model, it's much easier to scale because you're always open and you can bring people in to help you. And I think this is one of the reasons that Bailey has moved to an always open. I think she hit her limit of what she could
Gotcha.
do in those, she was kind of doing 1,000 orders every time she
Right.
opened her store. Hacking 1,000 orders,
Oh no.
it's not something you
No,
can
no.
do in 2 days, right? It's
No.
taking her a week and you have to start bringing people in to help you. And
Yeah.
so I think she was starting to realize that I need to be open. I need to spread it out a bit more.
Yeah.
And so if you're able to spread it out more, it's easier to bring in help because you're not just
Yeah.
bringing somebody in to help you for 2 days a month or 2 days a quarter. Now you can have somebody come in once a week or twice a week or whatever.
Yes. I think that's a big one. Like the other ones, particularly scarcity and urgency,
Really
you
help.
can compartmentalize because it is only you doing all
Mm-hmm.
the things. But if you have enough orders that you could have a part-time, a friend, your mom, your sister, whatever, help you part-time or a consistent number of hours a week to be your pick, pack, and shipper,
Mm-hmm.
immediately, if that's lifted from you, you don't have to compartmentalize anymore. You can create all the time. And so you could move. I think that's the big thing. I think so much of this, like it's not just what you want to do with your product, but it's what the business will allow you to do, what your
Yeah,
marketing can, and it will all change and evolve as your business grows, your product
100%.
available. Like even if you start painting smaller scale things or bigger scale things, or start creating a new additional, like if you started making candles, I don't know. If you know what I mean? Like if you added a new product to your mix that
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah,
totally different anyway, just really, there's so much to think about.
there is, and this is why they all kind of layer nicely together if you can use
Mm,
them in different aspects. I think once you're able to bring somebody in to help you, what that person who comes in once a week to help you pack orders. And another business that I follow on YouTube, she's another illustrator, Catnip Illustrations. She's also a big YouTuber, and
mm,
she does the always available model, but and she has people who work for her, and
yeah, yeah.
but they only ship out orders on Mondays and Tuesdays, I think.
Right.
So the person who helps her with shipping out orders, that's their job on Mondays and Tuesdays. But once you have that person in your business, hiring your first person is always the hardest thing because that's the first time you give up control
Yeah.
and it's very scary.
Yeah.
And you always think nobody can do things as well as you can. But once you get that person under, and you get a good rhythm going, suddenly, I don't know, for me, I'm like, what else can I get rid of? This is great.
Right.
And so maybe that
Seriously.
person who comes in and packs orders for you once a week, maybe they come in a second day a week and help you with social media or help you with making the product. Maybe they
Yep.
man your Cricut machines,
Yep.
or maybe they do soldering when you're making your jewelry, or maybe they prep your canvases, or, you know,
Yep. They could
whatever.
even just be helping you set up for markets and help you pack stuff in at
Helping
the
you set up
market.
for
Like there's
markets,
so
maybe
many.
taking pictures of your work for social media,
Yeah.
like creating pin, like there's so many little tasks that we have to do because we've talked about how important marketing is to all of these models. And if you can have somebody who can, maybe you get comfortable with them, you have a good vibe, and they start taking a few more things off your shoulders.
Yep.
Because one of the hardest parts about the always available model is carving out time to create.
Yes.
Now you're doing all the little things every damn day. You're
Yes.
packing the orders, you're checking your stock, you're making, you're doing all the things. And suddenly you realize you haven't created anything new in 3 months.
Which is a big that
That's a big
particularly if you're a
problem.
creator, like you're so busy doing the busy work that you forget and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't even
It's Mother's
done
Day
that.
next week, and I didn't do a Mother's Day card line
Yeah,
this year, or whatever. It's so easy to get stuck in the weeds of your
yeah,
business.
yeah,
So, and
yeah,
I fall into that trap all the time. So yeah, it's harder to carve out time to focus on creating,
yeah.
and you're in constant multitask mode because there's so many little things to be done. You need to be very good at planning. It's also harder to take time off because it
Yes,
requires you to close things down or tell
yeah,
people that shipping's going to be delayed or whatever. So, if your shop is always open, you always have to be responding to emails and questions and all that stuff.
sure.
And
Because always open to me means always on, and that means always on. You're always marketing yourself. You're always on, ready to like for the ding of the shipping,
Mhm.
order up, like that, and that
It's
can
a
be
24-hour
exhausting.
diner.
Exactly, a 24-hour diner. And I see why I am the crusty waitress at the end of her shift. I,
Yeah,
I totally get
absolutely.
it because I'm like,
You're frazzled. You've
you're
been on your feet
frazzled.
all
And
day.
yeah. And I think that's why you and I net out that it's nice to have a mix of all because it kind of changes things up a little bit. And it's like having, to use the diner analogy, like it makes it a theme night or a special event right? And you're buying tickets for the Valentine's Day dinner and it's serving, different meal than you normally get. And you have to buy your ticket now and it's done when it's done. And
Yes. So let's get into layering these. Just
yeah,
1 second, though, because there was one
yeah.
pro and one con that I did not mention.
Oh,
So, the one pro to this kind of model is that it's easier to become a destination brand and to grow by word of mouth because you're
mhm,
always there. So, it's easier for
yeah,
people to talk you up because it's not like they got, yeah, she only opens her shop once a month. I'm not really sure when the next opening is. And I can't remember what her website name is. And because you're not as top of mind. But
yes,
when you're always open and you're always marketing and you become like this, oh yeah, it's Heather Lynn Travis, her website,
yeah,
head over there. She always has prints,
right,
right?
yes,
So
yeah,
so it's a little easier to grow through word of mouth and to become sort of a destination type brand.
yeah,
Um, the con that we didn't mention, and it is a big con with this
mhm,
model, is that there is no urgency because
yeah,
you're always there. So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, you know what? That's really cute. I don't really have any money this week, so I'll come back later. Or they fill their cart and then they walk away and, um, whatever. Like there's
yeah,
no urgency to hit the buy button. It's not to say they won't buy. It's just
mhm,
you're always there. They know they can come
yeah,
back in a week, a month, 6 months, and the typewriter print will still be there because
yeah.
it's on your
It's
bestseller.
interesting just as you were saying that, because and one of the things that I find, so I follow brands that have got the urgency or scarcity model. I'll then flip a link to a girlfriend and be like, oh my God, this is so perfect for you. That is their first interaction with that person. And because I would say, you being an exception in my friend circle, most of my friends are like, I just got to this DM on Instagram like a week later. And they're like, what was this? And I'm like, you missed it. The joke has sailed, like the ship
Yeah.
has sailed. You missed it. And then I'm trying to explain, it's like I'm trying to be a brand advocate, but they're getting upset at me because it's not there anymore. And I'm like, but this is a you problem, not a them problem.
Well,
So I would say as a brand advocate, it's easier for me to be an advocate for somebody like I can be like, oh my God, Melissa makes the best for my planner. And then 4 months from now, somebody can say, you mentioned those planning stickers in a meeting we were at. And I can say, yeah, Melissa, here you go. I'll shoot you the link. And they can buy it. Like their urgency is self-directed as opposed to you being directing that urgency. Anyway, it's just a really
no,
interesting.
it's super true. And this is the thing you have to remember if you do the scarcity or the urgency model is that because we're small business owners, we are fairly active on social media, whether we want to be or not, because we
Mhm.
have to be, because we have
Yeah.
to market our businesses. But it's really important to remember that not everybody is. Like some
Yes.
people just don't show, they have an Instagram account and But they, like Heather said, they show up once a week and maybe they check their messages, maybe they don't. I don't know if anybody is even. So I did a little cool experiment last week on Facebook.
Yeah, ooh,
I muted every single page and group that I follow for 30 days. Facebook
ooh,
lets you do that, right? Every single one of them, so that only my friends would show up in my feed because everything else is muted. And because
yes,
I was starting to suspect nobody's on here. And my
nope, correct.
suspicions have proved correct. I
Yeah,
see like maybe one new post from my friends every couple of days.
yeah,
So people, they're not active on those platforms in the way that they used to be. And I
yeah,
think Instagram is starting to be like that. I think TikTok people are still pretty active because
yeah,
TikTok is the new place to go and just scroll and kill time.
yeah.
But that will change at some point.
But even on Instagram, like I have people, I will say things like, say I post a series of stories, I could say in three separate, you know, stories over the course of the day explicitly, either what I'm doing or where I am or whatever. And I'll have people who have, I'm like, I see the data. I saw you watch all the stories. And they're like, hey, where are you? And I'm like, dude, I said it explicitly. I use captions. I speak
But
clearly.
how
I don't
many
understand.
times have you been watching
You miss it.
stories and somebody distracts you and you put your phone down or you look
Yep.
up or whatever and the stories keep playing and you're just like having the
Yep.
conversation or you're taking
Yes.
the garbage out or doing letting the dog out or whatever and you come back and you've 20 stories have gone by, you didn't see them, right? Because you just,
Exactly.
right, so you just,
Oh, they watch it on mute or they're at the car dealership waiting for
yep.
a car thing. And so, like I might have said it three times in one day. I need to say it three times the next day and three times a day for the next 3 weeks to even.
Yes. And in the podcast episode that I will link to, the one I was talking about to earlier, she said you have to talk about it to the point where you are sick of hearing your voice because that
Yeah.
is the point where other people are starting to see it.
Starting. Yes. Yes. Which,
So
like, if you're, that's for me why the always on means always reminding people you can buy this. And I end up feeling like,
it's exhausting.
my God, what's her name? The character that she played in, oh my gosh, in the movie with Jim Carrey, The Truman Show. And she turns to the camera every time she's like, and this hot chocolate mix is the, like, I just feel so used car salesman-y,
It's
because
like I
there's
can't
only
do
so many ways
anything
you can
without
like weave it in
selling.
naturally. Yeah.
I can't even make my damn hot chocolate without selling the hot chocolate, right?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
anyway.
So it's definitely so so this is where you can start to layer these different
Yeah.
models and use different aspects of them that work. And I had a little note to myself here, going back to the original question that this thread was that inspired
Hmm.
this episode was creating planned out of stocks, which is sort of so this is basically, like I said, you sell purple bracelets, you have 20 of them on your shelf, but your website says that you're sold out because you want to
Right.
create this whole thing like, oh, it must be a good seller, it's sold out kind of thing, or oh, I missed it, it's sold
Yeah.
out. So it's kind of between the scarcity and the urgency model.
Yeah.
And so this is like, when the person asked the question, one person was like, if it's one of your best sellers, why would you ever be out of stock on it? You're missing sales. And then other people were like, yeah, it makes, there's a certain urgency. So next time it's in stock, they're going to buy it because
Yeah.
maybe it'll go out of stock again. So
And it's
you have to ask,
validating. Like
it's,
people like to feel validated. And so if it's out of stock, I'm not the only person who likes this and wants it,
yes.
which for some people is very appealing to have the thing that everybody else wants and they also got.
There's a whole segment of society out there
Yes.
that just revolves around having the newest thing because everybody else
Yes.
has it, or they want to have it when nobody else has it, right?
Yes.
If I get it
Yes.
now, nobody else can have it and they're all going to want it because I have it and
Yes.
it's sold out.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of people out there that's really important to them.
Yep.
I struggle with it because I'm not one of those people.
I know, neither do
so,
I.
so I have a hard time selling that model because I don't really get it. You know, I
When I'm like, oh, everybody else wants it, well, then
it's like,
maybe
yeah,
I,
too many people have it.
yeah, exactly it.
And that's another, there's always the person who wants to be different from everyone
Yeah,
else. So the minute you become mainstream, they're out of there. They're not your customer anymore.
yeah.
So if you go from the, it's you have to know who your people are.
I was just about to say that. I think part of this, and if you're debating it, and I'm funny enough, I'm even thinking of it like use your Instagram, post questions and ask people like, do you want this or this, A or B? Want this or this? And like, don't don't take their word as gospel, but it can help inform your decisions by saying, wow, people on my Instagram really liked the fact that they wanted to feel unique. How can you feel unique with this type of business model versus this type of business model? Or they want to feel like they're part of an exclusive club. Ah, interesting insight. So I would say talking to your people is it's a good thing to do. I again don't take it as gospel because one of the things that I find myself getting trapped in is people will answer the questions and I'm like, you're an excellent question answer. You are a shitty buyer though.
Very true.
You're
Very true.
super enthusiastic and you're super great at telling me your opinion. You are not great at opening your purse and actually buying anything.
Yeah, so
And so,
opinions are totally important, and you do need to you need to talk to your customer or
yeah,
potential customer, but at the same time, you also need to know your numbers because
yeah,
the numbers are what if
guide it.
that person never buys, or if everybody says, "Oh, I love this," but nobody ever buys it, then
Yep,
why maybe you need to get rid of it.
yeah,
So yeah, there's definitely there's so many different ways that you can do this, and I think we were talking about this before we came on the air because you're working on an exhibition which has a lot of original paintings.
mhm,
And so there is a scarcity mindset around each individual painting. So it's interesting
yes.
because you're how many paintings are you doing for this? 40, is it? Why do I
My
have
goal is to
40?
get to 40 canvases. I'm currently at canvas number 34, Melissa.
Okay, so you're getting there. You're getting there.
I'm getting
So
there. I have
let's
4 weeks
say,
left to paint.
so you've got 40 canvases to sell. So as a group of canvases, this is an urgency model.
Yes,
But as individual canvases, it's a scarcity model, right? Because
yes,
yes, there's 40 Heather Travis paintings. So there's 40 people can buy paintings, and that's a
yep,
nice number. But
yep,
only one person can have each painting
correct.
unless they go in as a conglomerate, a consortium
Yeah, yes.
to buy your painting.
Also
Um,
open to investors.
so so yes, there's a scarcity mindset and an urgency mindset. Um, but the other fact of this is that when those paintings are gone, they're gone. And what are you going to
Yes,
sell then? So are you going to do 40 more paintings? Now, knowing you, yes, you absolutely could do 40 more, and you probably will. Maybe not in such a condensed time frame, but
correct, correct.
um, but we were talking about, like, should you do prints for these paintings? Should they be limited edition prints? Should they be always available prints? Should you do you've talked about doing like a coffee table, or like a
Yep.
what do they call those? When you go to an art gallery and they have the exhibition book and you can buy like
Yeah.
the catalog
Yep.
type book. Um,
Yeah.
Something along those. And we're going to have Heather on to talk about her experience with doing her whole exhibition closer
It'll be a good
to,
one.
I haven't decided if we should have you on before the exhibition or after, so you can talk
Ooh.
about the entire process or talk about the lead up. But anyway, we will have Heather on to
Yeah.
talk just about the whole experience of doing a large scale exhibition, because this is a big exhibition. It's big
And
paintings.
there's so many moving parts. And even just on that, like it's a scarcity, but it's an urgency. I am going to create prints, but I'm not going to create prints of all of them. So some paintings, the scarcity of it is that painting that's it. There
Yeah,
will be no prints of this. Whereas some paintings there will be prints available. And so it's not that the original has multiples, but you could get a smaller scale, a different, your budget, et cetera, et cetera. And then there will be like a planned out of stock of a lot of things because I don't even the prints that I launched last year, which I've had sort of as an always available, uh, I think I'm going to plan an out of stock and like say, if you want them, I'm going to stop printing them now because I just creatively, and I think this is a big one for creators, creatively, I want to move on. And
Hmm.
so while I love it and I'm very proud of it, and I think, yes, I could probably make more money if I kept it up there and sold, a print or two every once in a while, but I want to move on. I want to move beyond that. And so it's like funny enough, it's like dropping something from your resume that you just don't,
Yeah, well,
you're like,
you grow as a person who's
yeah,
employable, and you grow as an artist. And
yeah,
maybe you no longer paint in that style, or you no longer do that style of jewelry, and you just don't want it there anymore.
yeah.
That's totally okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's the big one is that this is all like there's so many, I think, business decisions that fit into all of this. But I think part of it, particularly, and you touched on it, it's the values. Like a lot of emotion has to go into this. You have to think about how this fits with your values as a creator, what you want to, even supplies, ordering supplies, having supplies on hand, all of those things. Like there's so much to weave around. But I found this incredibly helpful to talk about. I can only imagine other people. I hope people listening have found this helpful. I find there's so much to think about when it comes to this. And it's
There
helpful to have
really
people
is.
to
And
talk
I
to.
think there's so many different variations you can do on these three models.
Yeah.
And, one of the things we talked about before we came on the air was the idea that, you could do limited edition prints from this exhibition.
Yep.
And when they sell out, maybe it's 25 prints of a
Yep.
certain painting or whatever. And when
Yep.
they sell out, they're gone.
They're gone.
But the thing is, you made a print. And
Yep.
so you can always make more prints. You can bring things back. Just because they're gone doesn't mean they're gone forever. So
Yes.
10 years from now, you could go do what's the word for it? There's a word for it when you go
Like a
back and
retrospective.
a retrospective. Thank you. I was thinking a
Yeah.
renaissance, and I'm like, that's not right. A retrospective.
I'm
And
ready
it's
for my
like,
renaissance.
where you bring back like these iconic pieces that you
Yeah.
did 10, 20, years ago, and they're
Yep.
available again as a limited edition print, because then you can play on that nostalgia factor, which is
It's like putting out a greatest hits album, right? Like you bring back the
absolutely
thing.
everything 80s and early 90s is big again. And this happens all the time. I remember I grew up in the 80s, and there was like this whole 50s renaissance, which was like
Yep.
that 30-year time gap, right?
Yes.
When I was around grade 8. And I remember I remember one of
And
my
your poodle
girlfriends had,
skirts. Do you remember?
yeah, we did. It wasn't so much the poodle, but I remember one of my girlfriends had like an oversized sweater that had poodle skirt
Yep.
girls on it. And,
Brilliant.
like it
Yep.
was just the 50s theme kind of
Yes.
sort of seeped through things for a little while there. And we went back to wearing like the short jeans with the white keds and stuff, and
Yep.
which was very 1950s. And yeah, so what you're doing now in
Yes.
2023, add 30 years onto that, so in 2053, like, hey man, it's going to be hip again.
Yes. Oh my gosh, exactly. And I think that's the thing is particularly uh and just as you said, prints. And so even though I'm not going to be doing prints of every single one of my paintings, I am having every single one about photographed so that
Okay,
I could.
yes, so this is important. Whatever you make, whether it's a painting, whether it's jewelry, whatever, you need to have some kind of visual record of it.
Mhm.
And if you go back and you see, like, when they go back through, particularly like fashion houses, these fashion
Mhm.
houses that have been around for over a century now, so like Chanel and Balenciaga and all those kind of really well-known fashion houses, they have everything. They have all of
Yes.
Coco Chanel's sketches, they have
Yep.
photographs of that dress when it was made, so it's all documented. And
Yep.
this is the kind of stuff that goes into like the Smithsonian and things like that.
Yes.
So you keep a visual record of everything that
Yep.
you make, because you just never know. You never know
Yes.
when you might want to use it for, like you said, a retrospective. Or who
Yep.
knows, maybe when you're 80 years old, somebody comes along and says, we would love to do um, an exhibit based on your
Yep.
life work.
I don't do a very good job, for instance, of keeping track of like exact paint colors or the whatever
Mhm.
that I use. But I videotape things a lot because I find it helpful to go back in and like check in on my process and be like, oh, I want to do something like this again. How did I do it?
Absolutely.
Because tend to create when I'm sort of just in the flow. And so I go back and watch a video and I'm like, ooh, look at how I did that. It's
Yeah.
like
Reference,
teaching myself.
inspiration.
Brian and I were, and Melissa and I were talking about this before we got on. I'm trying to figure out pricing for my exhibition. And one of the things that Brian, my husband, brought up, and he's like, because I buy canvases and a canvas can be on sale. I can get a deal from the supplier, whatever. So sometimes, it could cost me $20. Sometimes it could cost me $100, but it's the same thing. Um, and and he was asking, anyway, it's a whole big long series of questions. But one of the things that he suggested, I was like totally romanced with the idea, was almost like a library card on the back of every canvas that is a tracker for bought the canvas this day, this is the price, and then, started putting paint on it this day, put more paint on it this day, put more paint on it this day, it became the thing this day. Um, so that it's almost like an input manual for everything that creation process, but it tracks not only pricing but also, hours. So you'd be like, wow, I spent 4 hours here, 4 hours there, 4 hours there. I didn't realize I spent 12 hours on that painting, as an example. And anyway, it was just, I thought, wow, that would be really interesting. And one, from a customer perspective, not necessarily to see the hard costs, but it's almost like getting a sneak peek at the creation process. And total, like, I sign my paintings like it's like literally you're like, we get it, Heather, it's one of your paintings, because there's like a signature on the front, then I sign the back of the canvas, I write on the frame, I write on the back of the canvas. It's like everywhere. There's no doubt. And it's the breadcrumbs, because I want the provenance to be very clear. And fascinatingly, I have a picture that I bought 20 years ago at a photography exhibition, and my mom wants a copy of it. She just announced her love of it. And I took the whole thing apart. It was framed by the artist itself. I cannot find one piece of evidence on who took this photograph other than this weird chicken scratch on the front for a signature that's illegible. And there's no breadcrumb trail. I'm like, 20 years
And
later, I would have
apparently
bought
that's
another picture.
extremely common. Yeah. And so
Anyway, that's my summary for today's episode is label your artwork.
label your artwork,
However
record
you're
your
selling
artwork.
it, urgency or scarcity or always available, please make sure that we know where it came from.
Absolutely. But yeah, label, make sure people know who it came from, but
Yeah,
also track your progress for
yeah.
yourself and document that progress, put it in your archives. You just never know, right? Like,
Yeah. Yes. And so I think documenting, I think all of this, and all of this goes into, sometimes you have to do things that are very deliberate for your business, like thinking through what your business model is. And sometimes you're like, I'm just having these photographed. Why? To have them photographed.
you
And
just
that's
never
the
know.
like, yeah,
Because if it is your original painting and you sell it to somebody, then it's gone and it's out of your hands and you can never actually view it again without getting permissions and stuff like that,
yeah,
unless that person who
yep,
buys it donates it to a gallery or something,
yep,
right? Which happens. But like, plus it's just really cool to be able to go back and look at this thing you did 20 years
totally.
ago when you were just starting out and look
Yes,
at what you're doing now and being like, wow, like I actually
yes,
have really grown as an
yes,
artist, as a person.
yeah,
And I go back sometimes and look at my old stuff, and sometimes I see stuff in there and I'm like, wow, I was capturing something really cool there. And I feel like I've gotten away from being able to do that. And I need to go back to
yes,
that. So
yes.
yeah.
I completely agree with you. And I think that retrospective, like even internally, is so hugely valuable. So
Yeah,
hugely valuable. And to see
definitely.
your own growth, it's like, having pictures of your childhood and seeing somebody grow up, right?
It's the
You
markers on
can
the door
watch,
frame, right? This is how tall
yes,
you
like you
were
can watch the
and as you
evolution.
grow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And whenever we leave our homes that have those marks, that's always a really sad moment for people because
Yeah.
you're leaving behind the record of your growth, right?
Yeah.
And everything that happened in that place. So to be able to document it and take it all with you, it's
Yes.
very cool.
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully
We
we got
talked
a
a
little
lot.
off target there at the end, but hopefully this was really helpful to you. And I think the power in this is really using bits and pieces from each of these models when it's appropriate, where it's appropriate, and having them work together. Sometimes you're going to be at different points in your life where one is just not appropriate and doesn't work for that season that
Mhm.
you're in, and other times you're going to be able to do all three. And so I think it's really important to remember that as a business, just as we grow as artists and evolve as artists, same thing happens to us as business owners and entrepreneurs. We grow and we evolve and we try new things, and that's actually the key to being a successful business owner and a successful entrepreneur, is being able to pivot and to try new things or to go back to
Yeah.
old things. And
Yeah. Fail
yeah, so
forward.
yes,
Fail
absolutely.
forward.
Yes. So yeah, but I think one thing with laying these all out is it gives you a good opportunity to sit down in your business and really examine what you're doing and decide if
Yeah.
there's a model here that could really work for where you're at right now, that could maybe take you to the next level. So that's always something to think about. But yeah,
Mhm.
this was a fun chat. I enjoyed this one. Yeah.
Me too.
Okay, that is it for this week, everybody. I will be back in 2 weeks with another brand new episode. So until then, um, thanks for stopping by and listening. We'll talk to you all soon.
Enjoy the day.
Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.